Bonne Foi, Chapter 4. The job hunting didn't take long in a small town. There were only so many shops and restaurants to stop at, and even fewer of those were taking applications. Bella was struggling. Most of the employers found her track record unimpressive, especially when she tended to demonstrate her clumsiness in the process. The coffee shop was the last place we were stopping at, and Bella was getting desperate. "What happens if you don't get a job?" I asked, helping her out of the car. I'd noticed she had a tendency to stumble on the curbs. It seemed pointless to let her injure herself. "I can probably finish out the semester on what I have saved, but after that I don't know if I'd be able to come back for the spring semester. My loans only cover so much." I frowned. That was unacceptable. I needed to have access to her, and her dropping out of school would be an obstacle. The coffee shop was a generic sort of place like every other coffee spot in Washington. The store was empty at this time of day, save for the two people working there. One, a girl in her early 20s, leaning against the counter with an expression of boredom, while her thoughts flittered around the party she would go to tonight. The other was a younger male, probably just 18, reading a graphic novel. Both straightened at our entrance. The girl's thoughts locked on me, swirling through vague sexual scenarios. I fought the urge to roll my eyes, but that didn't bother me nearly as much as the attention the boy paid to Bella. "What can I get for you?" the waitress asked, changing her posture purposefully so that her cleavage peeked from her V-necked shirt. Actually, I wanted to know if you were hiring here," Bella said, struggling to gain the girl's attention. The boy, on the other hand, was staring intently at her breasts. I wanted desperately to shove his head into the blender behind him, and I might have, if it wouldn't have raised some serious red flags for Bella. "What's your name?" the waitress asked, finally focusing on Bella. I gathered from her thoughts that she was in fact some kind of manager and had a certain amount of responsibility in terms of fielding applicants. I shuddered at the thought of her in any position of authority. "Bella Swan," she said uncomfortably. "Josh, why don't you take her to the back and let her fill out an application?" the girl said without turning her head an inch. It was painful to watch Bella step around the counter to follow the boy out of sight. I kept an ear on their conversation as the girl offered me a smile. "So, will you be around much if she gets the job?" the girl asked, currently midway through a fantasy about me taking her inside a bathroom stall. I cringed inwardly. Would it help her get the job if I said yes? I wondered, thinking she just might be shallow enough to consider it. A wicked smile crossed her face. She thought I was interested, though I was not remotely. She would be considered pretty, I suppose, but she smelled unpleasantly tart, and her eyes were slanted like a cat's. "Definitely," she said. "Then yes, I will be around," I replied. "If Bella needed this job to stay around, then I'd do what I could to get her the job." The boy Josh was making small talk with Bella while she tried to fill out her application. Judging by the expression I saw through his eyes, she was not impressed. "I'm Marissa, by the way," the waitress said, though I was perfectly capable of reading her name tag. "I've never seen you around here before. I thought I knew everyone in town." "I don't live near the campus," I said distractedly, as the boy considered asking Bella for a date. Though I knew she would refuse him, and though I knew he was no threat to me, I didn't like him having those thoughts in his mind at all. "Well, you should come around more," she batted her eyelashes. I made a non-committal noise. "So what's your name?" Could I maybe buy you dinner sometime?" "Edward," I said through gritted teeth. "Oh, I have a boyfriend, actually." "I love that name," she enthused. "Can I call you Eddie?" "I thought you might. Can't blame a guy for trying." though, right? No. Right, a nervous laugh. Well, I'm all done, so... The boy took her application and she hurried out to the front. He followed close behind while the girl looked quizzically at me, wondering at my change in tone. How did it go? Marissa asked Bella, seriously considering recommending her for hire just so that I could be back and she could have another shot at me. Personally, I thought it was a horrible job for Bella. I could only imagine the endless amounts of hot coffee she would spill on herself. But if the job would keep Bella here... Fine, thanks, Bella said, glancing between me and the waitress. Well, I guess we should get going then. I nodded my agreement and placed an arm around Bella's shoulder to steer her out. She didn't look back, but I did, making sure the boy got the message. He understood he was out of his league, but the girl unfortunately did not. I didn't like her, Bella scowled as soon as we were outside. I didn't like either of them, I told her, opening the car door for her to get in. Josh was perfectly nice, she said, stepping into the car. I hurried around to get in after her. Nice to you, I pointed out. She had the decency to blush. At least he was decent about it. That girl looked at you like a cat watches a bird. I made a face, feeling the truth of Bella's statement. It's extremely unattractive. Bella frowned thoughtfully at me as I started the engine. So you don't like women to be aggressive? I thought about her question, remembering the way she'd grabbed me without hesitation last night, and imagining her doing so many times again. No, aggression is okay. I just don't want to be thought of as a trophy or an accessory. I'd rather not be on the same level as a pair of shoes. Bella smiled. No, you're much better than any of that. Her eyes full of admiration were too much to handle, and I trained my eyes on the road. Was there anywhere else you wanted to go? No, she answered. That's everywhere. Back to the dorms, then? That's fine. She sounded disappointed, and I had to glance over to be sure. We could do something else if you wanted, I offered, wishing I could just know what she wanted without having to ask. How was I supposed to keep her pleased with me if she was going to hide her desires? Oh no, that's okay. She turned her head to stare out the window. I've taken up enough of your time today. I have plenty of time on my hands, more than she knew, but I didn't want to spend it dragging answers out of her. Did you have something in mind? She bit her lip, embarrassed. No, I just don't want to say goodbye to you yet. Oh, I smiled, mentally laughing. So she just wanted to keep me around longer. Why hadn't she just said as much? I can come back with you, can't I? Of course, she said quickly, but only if you want to. I do. I wanted to take her again and make her mine for all the world to see. Good, she grinned. Favorite childhood pet? I asked. We were taking turns asking questions, and I was struggling to come up with the things to ask, though she seemed to have a wealth of questions to ask. I had some fish. They all died, she admitted, rolling onto her stomach in the bed. I watched her from the desk chair. I think it's a good thing I never had a dog. And you? Never had any, I said. I had vague recollections of a family cat from my human life, but I couldn't even remember if I'd liked it or not, let alone what its name was. Huh. Favorite movie? Fight Club, I said automatically. Bella rolled her eyes at me. That's such a typical male answer. I grinned. Fight Club is a psychological masterpiece that just so happens to have the advantage of containing massive amounts of violence. What's your favorite then? Wait, let me guess. Pride and Prejudice? She blushed, and I knew I'd guessed right. I laughed. Who's typical now? In love with Colin Firth, are you? Heavens no, she huffed, defensive. I prefer the original Mr. Darcy, thank you, Laurence Olivier. classic and timeless. I chuckled. Forgive me, I should have known better. All right, favorite color? Bella shrugged. It changes from day to day. And what is it today? I pressed. Brown, I suppose, she said, glancing down at the brown shirt she wore. You? Gray, I answered honestly, to which she looked at me dubiously. Hey, you're the one who likes brown. Bella frowned. Well, brown is a nice warm color, but gray is so... Cold, I finished for her. You're right, brown is warm. I thought, thinking of the warmth of her that hid in those dark eyes and that curtain of hair, just as I was as cold as the gray I preferred, but she didn't seem to mind. And gray is cold, but there are a million different shades of it. Valid point, she conceded, propping her chin up on one hand. Okay, what did you want to be as a child? I couldn't remember being a child, but I remembered the last bit of my human life. A soldier. You? A lion tamer, she laughed. Why a soldier? I thought hard. It was stories about the world wars. That was before I understood what war really was, of course. Why a lion tamer? I'm not sure exactly, she admitted. Mostly it looked like fun playing with giant cats, but I think I wanted to feel like I was someone powerful, even though I knew I wasn't. I smiled at the thought of this little lamb in front of me trying to tame a lion. She would put up a good fight probably. Most embarrassing moment? She groaned loudly. God, there are too many to count, she said. I heard a loud grumble from the direction of her stomach and she winced. Probably that one. I guess I should find something to eat soon. I glanced at my watch. It was nearly 5 o'clock. I'm sorry I kept you from lunch. She shrugged it off. I didn't even notice until now, she admitted, sitting up on the edge of her bed. Do you want to come with me? I should probably take care of some things, actually, I said, thoughts of feeding swirling around my head as I got out of the chair. I'd better go now, but I'll see you soon. Promise? She asked, looking up at me with those hopeful eyes. It was sort of cute. I promise, I said, debating what to do next. It seemed too abrupt just to walk out the door now. How did boyfriends say goodbye to their girlfriends? Should I kiss her? Just say goodbye? Her eyes still stared up at me, wide and waiting, and in the end I leaned down and pressed my lips to hers. It was hardly a sacrifice. My mouth always tingled with warmth when we kissed. I didn't know for sure what to compare it to, but I thought it might be like drinking a cup of hot cocoa. I felt it all over, within and without. Soon, I said again before turning and slipping out the door. Time spent with Bella passed too easily. With her I tended to forget about all else, even my thirst. Deciphering her thoughts and emotions took so much concentration that I could ignore the burning fire her scent ignited. And when I was using her body, the pleasure was too great to think of anything else. Away from her, however, I could feel the lack of blood taking its toll on me. I had been hungry when I met Bella. My eyes had been nearly completely black. Now, nearly a week later, my irises were the same color as my pupils, and I was growing weak. It was painful, to say the least. It was as if every part of my body was cramping in thirst, and yet I kept moving. I knew I had to hunt tonight, but I was nervous, and that made me angry. I didn't want to see Bella's face again when I tried to feed. I didn't like the sight. I didn't like that sight could affect me at all. Hopefully, though, instinct would be enough to make tonight's hunt successful. Instinct and severe thirst. I went to another town tonight, wary of running into Bella if I stayed in the area. It was a smaller place, but it was a Saturday night, and many people were out and about. I wandered to the edge of town, where there was a diner barely separate from the encroaching forest. When a woman approached who smelled of strawberries, I reached out and grabbed her, tugging her back into the trees with me. She thought about screaming, but I clamped my hand over her mouth before she could open it. Her scent was strong, overwhelming, dizzying, as if, She had a fresh cut on her hand, I realized, as she clawed at my arm. I lifted the hand to my lips, eager to taste. Her thoughts were little more than a frantic buzz in the back of my mind. The scent overpowered me, filling my nostrils and clouding my mind. I flicked my tongue out, ready for the first drop. "Stop, please," Bella's voice whimpered in my ears. I growled, frustrated, and tried again. "Edward, please," she cried, and this time her horrified eyes stared at me. I ignored her. She couldn't stop me this time. I needed this blood. Didn't she understand that? Frantic, I tried to be faster than my thoughts, pressing my tongue toward the heat of that warm blood. "Edward!" And now she was terrified, trapped underneath me, thrashing and throwing her weight against me in an attempt to fight me off. Those dark eyes pleaded for life. Furious, I dropped the woman and took off running into the trees. I heard her hit the ground, unable to stand on shaky knees. But I kept going as fast as my legs would carry me. I felt on fire everywhere, thirstier than I'd been since my awakening as a vampire. I ran and ran, not realizing until I was nearly upon it that I was following a scent that promised to ease the thirst. I pounced, unthinking, sinking my teeth into a pulsing jugular. The life-giving liquid filled my mouth, soothing the burn as it washed down my throat. I drank greedily until I could draw no more. Only then could I pull away to see what I had killed. It was a deer, a simple doe, tawny brown in the moonlight. I sat back on my heels, amazed. The concept of feeding from animals had never occurred to me, but it seemed painfully obvious in the wake of what I had just done. I had always assumed that vampires had to feed from humans. That was what I craved, what the others of my kind I'd ever met did. But what were humans but another type of animal? Humans could survive on a variety of diets. Why should vampires not as well? I ran my tongue over my teeth, considering the taste. It wasn't anything magnificent, sort of gritty and bitter, but it wasn't entirely unsavory either. Not as bad as human food tasted, certainly. And if I could feed off animals without any disturbing vision, then that was even better. Maybe I didn't have a choice anymore. Out of habit, I hid the evidence burying the creature under the forest floor. I had made more of a mess of myself than usual in my desperation, soaking my shirt with drops of blood. So I took a circuitous route back to my car, avoiding the town and any witnesses. I made the drive quickly, speeding down deserted roads, my mind full of the possibilities. Surely, if I could feed from a deer, I could feed from any animal. Would some taste better than others? Would any taste better than humans? Better than Bella would taste? Were there others out there that lived off animal blood? Were they just as strong, just as happy? Once I was back at my apartment, I peeled away the dirty clothes and tossed them in the trash. I didn't feel like washing out bloodstains. Then I hopped in the shower, cleansing away all traces of the animal. The clothes I'd worn with Bella were still on the bed, where I'd left them after changing earlier. From them, her scent filtered through the room. Now that my thirst was satisfied, it was little more than a sting in the back of my throat to smell her. My body, however, was buzzing with the fresh blood and exhilaration of the hunt, and a certain part reached strongly to her smell. Could I go to her now? I checked the time. It was past midnight. She would likely be sleeping. As early as she'd woken today, I would have to wait for tomorrow then. With a sigh, I lay back on my bed without bothering to dress, and settled in to pass the nighttime hours. I glanced down my body at my standing cock, wishing I hadn't needed to hunt so badly. I could be in Bella's bed right now, or even better, inside her. Instead, I was alone in my apartment, with nothing to do but what I'd been doing for nearly a century. Groaning, I reached for the clothes I'd worn with her, meaning to toss them further away and banish the cause of my torment, but instead I found myself bringing them to my nose, breathing in her mingled scents. It brought up images in my too vivid memory of our bodies joined, of her wet heat all around my cock, of her delicious breath panting on my face as she clung to me. I tossed the clothes away and wrapped my hand around my erection. Fantasies swam through my head as I tried to imitate her light touch. Visions of her spread beneath me, with lust-filled eyes, images of her breasts, bouncing as I pounded into her. It wasn't quite enough. I crafted new fantasies while I stroked myself harder. Now she was on all fours as I took her from behind, her hair like silk between my fingers, while I held her head up. And now I had her up against the wall, screaming my name as she clenched around my cock. I came in a quick burst that ended all too soon. It wasn't satisfying really, but it would hold me over until I could have her again. Maybe I should see her tomorrow. That wasn't too soon, was it? People in relationships saw each other all the time. Yes, I would see her tomorrow.